All right, so we already know how important light is to plants because we talked about photosynthesis, right? So we're going to talk about 3 characteristics of light today that are going to affect our plants and their growth. So these are the characteristics of light that affect your plants. So one characteristic, the first one is our wavelength. Now you actually already know this one. So think back to our photosynthesis lecture. What is the colors on the color spectrum that the plant absorbs? Red and blue. And remember how we talked about light is actually energy that makes waves. So that's the wavelength that appears as red and blue to our eyes. So red and blue is the wavelength that the plant absorbs in order to perform photosynthesis and other things. For example, when we talk about germination, you remember what germination means? So when the little baby plant, the cotyledon, escapes from the seed coat and is basically born, that's germination. So for example, when we get more into germination, we'll learn how the red wavelength comes into play. So red and blue is for photosynthesis and other things, other biological processes. So while we're on wavelength, what is the wavelength? What is the color that the plant, well, we know it absorbs red and blue. What is the color that it reflects to our eyes? Green. Excellent, green. Green is the reflection. What is the pigment, okay, that reflects that green? Remember, okay, let's go back to our cell organelles, okay, our C and our C. You remember what our C and our C were in our cell organelles? Our cellulose. Well, that's one of the C's. Cellulose is our cell wall. But what about those inside of it? Remember, you used your grapes for one of them. It's your chloro and your chromo, right? So which one of those is the one that reflects the green? Chloro. That's right, your chloroplast, because of the chlorophyll in that plastid. So chlorophyll is the one that reflects the green and absorbs the red and blue. Good. All right, so wavelength. Another one is intensity. Now intensity, we're going to do 3 rules of thumb. And let's just leave that for a moment, and then we're going to talk about those 3 rules of thumb, okay? But intensity is another one. And your third one is photoperiod. So anytime that we end with, all right, so photo, you know, the prefix means what? Okay, like we talked about a picture, taking a picture, but that photo always refers to, okay, photosynthesis is a word that would have this. So photosynthesis refers to the synthesizing of what to make food? It requires what? Light, exactly. So photo always refers to light. So we got light, and then whenever we have period, we're referring to the duration. Okay, the duration or the length of time. So this is the duration of light that the plant receives. All right. So I want to talk about 3 photoperiods here. We've got our short day, we've got our long day, and we've got our day neutral. Now, plants have a requirement of light, but they also have a requirement for dark. It's not just the light that affects the plant, it's also the length of darkness that reflects the plant, that affects the plant. But the scientists, when they very first started this, they didn't realize that plants have a requirement for darkness. They thought, oh, it's just the sun. Okay, it's just how much light they get. So they named these in relation to how much basically sunlight they get instead of darkness. But they do have a darkness requirement. So in other words, a plant that we call a short day plant. What that does is it flowers in response to short days, and or if there's short days, how much darkness are they getting? If they're getting short days, they're getting long nights, right? Yeah. So, because they do have this darkness requirement as well as the light requirement, if you have a long night, short day, long night plant, like for example, when does this occur? This is in the fall and the winter, right? So what's a fall winter plant? What do you get at Christmas? Those big red poinsettias, right? Okay, so a poinsettia or a chrysanthemum would be an example of this type of plant because it flowers in the short days, long nights. So because it has a dark requirement, what would happen if you had a greenhouse full of poinsettias and somebody built a road right next to it, and then all night long headlights are hitting into your greenhouse? Do you think those headlights, because when we did photosynthesis, we said it doesn't have to be sun, it just has to be red and blue, right? So if you have headlights that just happen to have that red and blue light spectrum in them hitting into your greenhouse, do you think that's going to disrupt this photo period?
A little bit.
It is, because it's light interrupting the dark requirements of the plants. And so then your plants are not going to flower properly. They're going to end up with a lot more vegetation and a lot less flowers. So that is what we refer to as light pollution, and it can absolutely affect your photo period. Okay? So if we have long day plants, they flower in response to long days and what kind of nights? Short nights. Exactly. So I can't really think of how this would happen, but let's just say that somehow something came over your greenhouse, like something just covered your greenhouse. Maybe, I don't know, a tarp blowing in the wind blew over your greenhouse, and the light couldn't get into it, okay? So then the short nights, okay, let's see, my turn. All right, so if the tarp flies over your greenhouse, unlikely, but then it makes the nights very long and it makes a lot more darkness. Would that affect that photo period? Yes, it would. And again, these flowers, these spring flowers, would not flower properly. So that's how this photo period. Or how about this? If we have a lot of, for example, down here in the south, we have a lot of sun in the spring, right? What if it just turned cloudy? All like cloudy. Somehow we had a pollution, places where volcanoes erupt and put a lot of pollution in the air that blocks the sun. Is it going to affect these flowers? Absolutely. And remember our lecture about flowers. Flowers do what for the plant? Flowers are the what type of organ for the plant?
What type of organ?
Yeah, what do they do? Why do we need flowers? For the pollen, which is the male gamete, right? And for the ovules, the female gamete that come together to do what? For sexual reproduction. So if we don't have flowers, we don't have sexual reproduction of these plants. All right. A day neutral plant will flower independently of light. So a day neutral plant will flower according to other criteria other than the photo period. So there's other criteria for it aside from the photo period. Just to give you a couple of examples from the animal world, because I said I'll use a lot of animal examples as well. So let's talk about horses, since that's my favorite. So horses, mares, which are female horses, when you're wanting to breed them, when it's they actually cycle in response to the photo period, okay? So in the spring, when the sun starts coming out more and more, they will actually start their cycle so you can breed them. But a lot of people want to breed earlier because then they get bigger foals to compete, things like that. They want to breed earlier. So what they do is they leave the mares in the barn and they keep the lights on all night long. And that tricks the body into thinking that it's spring, and they start to cycle. Another example would be the losing their winter coat. When the horses start losing all that hair they get to keep them warm in the winter, they don't lose it in response to heat. I wish they would, because it just seems like it makes more sense. They lose their hair in response to the light. So when they start losing all that winter hair in the springtime, and then suddenly we get a cold snap, they can be quite chilly. So that's just a couple of animal examples, just to kind of help you understand the photo period. So that's going to be our 3 photo periods that I want you to be concerned with. All right. Just to let you know a couple from my notes to remind myself, photo period can also affect other things other than flowering, such as height, but we're going to be mostly concerned with the flowering. All right, let's look at our 3 rules of thumb about intensity. So you don't have to get your worksheet out yet. We'll just go over these 3 rules of thumb, and then we'll use the worksheet to kind of test our learning. All right, so first rule of thumb. I need a green marker, but I don't have it. Just pretend this is a green marker, okay? All right, so we got a leaf, my wonderful leaf here, that's very dark green. So if it's dark green, what is making that green color? What cell organelle? Go back to your cells. Remember your C and your C.
Chloroplast.
Yes, excellent, chloroplast. So if it's dark green, it's got a lot of chloroplast, right? All right, and we got a leaf that's just sort of light green. So would our light green leaf have more chloroplast or less chloroplast? Less chloroplasts. So the job of your chloroplast, the first job, remember from photosynthesis, is to collect the light energy, right? So, and then also they have the other jobs, remember, to cook into ATP, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, if you have a lot of chloroplast, remember, many hands makes light work, right? Or you have less chloroplast, which one of these crews has an easier time collecting a bunch of light? Which one has the easiest job?
Dark green.
The dark green. So this is going to collect light, we'll just say easier. It's going to collect more light faster. All right. So which one of these do we need to help out by giving more light to them? We need to help this one, right? So this one needs more light. Very good. So if you have, let's say you have a window over here, so you're getting a lot of sunlight, more light. And then you have a corner over here with no window, it's kind of a little more shady. Which one of these is going to go by the window?
More light
The
green.
one that needs more light, the light green one. Excellent. And the dark green one can go over here. So that's one rule of thumb, is that the plants that are a darker green can not have to have the most light. Exactly. So that's rule of thumb 1. All right. So our rule of thumb 2 is going to be variegated versus non-variegated. So what we are talking about with variegation, this is a new word for us. That's a wonderful leaf there. All right. So variegation means there's areas without chloroplast, okay? Areas without chloroplast. So if it doesn't have chloroplast, what's going to show? Our other C. You remember what our other C was? Our C and our C, our chloro and our...
Chloro and chromo.
Yes, our chromoplast are what's going to be revealed. And remember, our chromoplast was everything else. So let's just say there's an area here, a little stripe with no chloroplast or less chloroplast. So it gets a little red stripe in the leaf. And remember, we're pretending this is green. So, variegated has a place of note, and it could be, remember the chromoplast could be red, orange, yellow, could even have a purple effect. So, variegation means there's another color in the leaf, and then non-variegated is going to be all green. Okay, which one of these is going to have more chloroplast? Remember the chloroplast, reflect green? Excellent. More chloro, less chloro. So which one of these is going to have the easiest job? Which crew is going to be the easier one to collect light? Go ahead.
More chloro.
Yep. So I like to take this apart like a puzzle, so make it make sense. Collect light easier. Takes more work to collect light. Alright. And so which one of these do we need to help out by giving it more sunlight? That's right, the variegated. Very good. So this one needs more light. So this is the one that's going to be in the sun, requires something more sun, and this one can have require less light. Not no light, but less light. All right. We got one more rule of thumb, which is going to be fat leaves versus thin leaves. All right, fat leaves are going to be like a jade, a cactus, things with real waxy, thick epidermis and a thick waxy layer. The waxy layer is called the.
No, not wait.
I know you know it. Look, I know you know it. Look. When you go get your nails done, the waxy layer.
Cuticle.
Yes. Okay. So we're talking about a thick.
Cuticle.
Excellent. So we're talking about a thick epidermis and a thick cuticle here versus a very flat leaf. All right. So now this is going to be a hard one. All right. Remember our slideshow? I showed you the side view of a leaf. We had the epidermis on the bottom, and the middle layer is where all the chloroplasts were, right? What's that middle layer called? Remember we said, we talked about, we could think about like that all the chloroplasts are in that middle layer, and they're having a party, and it makes, there's one little chloroplast that kind of gets a little rowdy and makes a mess of Phil. Remember our little chloroplast named Phil. And that's what I want you to draw, is I want you to draw a chloroplast. Well, he actually looks like he's laying on the floor right there. Anyway, however you think a chloroplast will look. He's sleeping. Mesophyll. Alright, so our mesophyll layer is in the center of the leaf, if you remember that slide. Alright, so here's all our chloroplasts in here, having a party, making a mesophyll. Sunlight coming down. Now, is the sunlight, we're looking from the side, is the sunlight going to have an easier time getting through this epidermis and cuticle, or is it going to have an easier time getting through this epidermis and cuticle? Which one? Huh?
The bottom.
Yes, it's going to have an easier time. Sunlight collected easier. Sunlight, I'll put more work to collect sunlight. More work to collect. Alright, so out of these two, which are we going to help out with more light?
Help out.
Yeah, which one? Top. Excellent. So this one needs more light. And this one can have less light. So actually, and out in the wild, in the woods, you find a lot of these types of leaves under the trees, in the shady areas, okay? Arrowhead, which is one that's on our worksheet, would be an example. Whereas this would be like our cactus, our jade, or things that are out in the sun. So this is kind of like a cycle, okay? This one needs more light, but the more light it gets, the more it stimulates it to make that thick cuticle, to protect it from losing too much water through transpiration. Transpiration would be water lost through the what? What are those holes called? That carbon dioxide goes in, again from our photosynthesis lecture. Carbon dioxide goes in, and then it can lose water through transpiration through, what are the holes? Guard cells open them and guard cells close them. Remember that word? Look in your note. Do you have your notes from last week? Actually, let's see, when did we, photosynthesis lecture. Wouldn't be last week, it would have been the week before. So you're having to go way back a couple of weeks in your memory. It would have been not last week because that was our field trip, the week before.
You had a handout?
You did. You did have a handout. Not that one.
Oh, this one.
Wait. So, is it in?
Diamond?
No.
No.
So remember.
Stoma.
Yes, good job.
Yeah.
The stoma. Okay. So remember all this works together. So the more sunlight that's hitting it, it requires the sunlight to get through to do photosynthesis, but it makes a thicker cuticle in response to the sunlight so that it's not losing as much water coming out through the stoma. Okay. So there's a couple more things that we're going to talk about. Phototropism is really, really interesting. That's not really one of our characters of light, but that's a response to light. So since we're talking about light, here's where I want to talk about phototropism. Now we said photoperiod was referred to the duration of light, right? Phototropism, again, because of photo, we're talking about light. Tropism. So think about this, if you break your leg, which I did, and so I know this firsthand, if you break your leg, you don't use it, your muscles atrophy, which means you lose muscle, you lose the ability for movement somewhat, okay? So that's just a way that I remember that anything like this T-R-O-P, like tropism, refers to movement. So we have movement in relation to light, all right? Now, have you heard that plants will turn towards the light? Okay? So that's basically what we're talking about here. That plants moving towards the light, and we're going to use a sunflower as a perfect example. This is my wonderful illustration of a sunflower. All right, so sunflowers standing up. Let's do the sun over here. Let's just call this morning right here. So in the morning time, the sun's over here and the sun's hitting this side of the sunflower, right? All right, there's a hormone that's being produced in this flower, in the stem, called auxins. Now, auxins are broken down in light. All right, light breaks down the auxins. So we have auxins here, and we have auxins here running into the plant. Which side are the auxins going to be broken down?
Facing light.
Correct. So auxins are breaking down here. What the auxins are doing over here is promoting growth and cell elongation. Alright, so if this side of the stem is actually getting growth and elongation, and this one is really not because the auxins are being broken down, this side of the stem gets a little bit longer and pushes the flower towards the sun. Okay? Then, when the sun's over here in the evening, and it's over here, now this side, the auxins are going to be getting broken down. The auxins are going to build up over here, and they're going to turn the stem so the flower's facing the light here. So it's still magical, you know what I mean? It's still a magical process. We're just getting to see a little bit of the magic behind the curtain of how that happens.
Right.
So auxins break down naturally in about 2 hours anyway. So they've got to constantly be being produced. So since they break down in about 2 hours anyway, as the sun is moving and the sun's breaking them down, what was produced already is naturally breaking down already. Does that make sense? So it helps it in that turning. So they break down, they're always produced. Auxins break down naturally in about 2 hours, but also sunlight breaks them down more. So that is how we get phototropism. So knowing that, let's talk about what happens if you have a little plant, and let's say that the plant is not getting much light. There's just a little tiny bit of light up here. Let's say he's in the house and he's not getting enough light. That plant, because the light would be breaking down the auxins, but he's not getting that. So the auxins are building up and building up, right? So he's actually just going to grow more and more and more and more and more. Okay, so trying to get to the light, we think, oh, that would be great. The plant's going to grow a lot.
Yeah.
But it's not doing its normal photosynthesis to eat, not being healthy. So what you get with this is actually not a big, healthy growing plant. You get a long, spindly stem, okay? And remember we talked about at the base of each leaf last week, we said, how do you know if it's a leaf or a leaflet? Because you're looking for a node, right? So what you get is you get a little leaf here at this node, a little leaf here at this node, a little leaf here at this node. So you get these very long, what we call internodes. Okay? So you're getting a lot of length and you're getting a lot of growth of the stem, but you're getting these very long internodes, very unthrifty plant, unhealthy looking, these small leaves, and it's just not doing what it's supposed to be doing. So if you wanted to get a really nice, robust, round, plant, not round, but you know what I'm saying, with lots of leaves and things like that, they've got to get the appropriate amount of light. So those are several. Let me see if I've left anything out about light. That's really all I want to cover today about light. So do you have any questions? And also, are you enjoying the way every lecture we do suddenly relates back to every other lecture we've done? So do you have any questions about light? No? Okay. Well, obviously, we'll refer back to this when we do some other lectures. All right. So get out your worksheet and let's go over that. And you can just take a look at it. Give me just a second, and we'll kind of go through the worksheet together. Go ahead and just take a little peek at it, though.